So, welcome to the Be Lively Club, Sarah. I'm so thrilled to have you here. For anyone that doesn't know Sarah, Sarah is a transformational coach and a workplace educator and trainer, supporting people through the midlife transition and menstrual cycles and health. So, yeah, thank you, Sarah, for coming.
Thank you.
What kind of like inspired you to create the Menopause at Work? And I suppose what were kind of like the key challenges women face during menopause in the workplace?
Yeah, so it started from my coaching experience that I suddenly realized I was attracting lots of people who were going through menopause symptoms and had no idea. And I'd experienced that myself in the workplace. I had a senior role at work. I used to work for a uniform provider, senior role, supply chain manager, really important job. Loved it, absolutely. Loved the fact that it was a bit chaotic, yeah, but I felt empowered and important and really valuable to the company. And then all of a sudden it got to around about 44 and the wheels fell off for
Mm.
me. And I had no idea what was going on. I felt suddenly really anxious about more things than I'd ever felt before, and quite a lot of panic, and just a feeling of not being capable of doing my work any longer. And it was really quite disabling at the time because I had no idea what was going on. My mum was going through dementia at the time, had been early onset dementia, and I thought I had it as well because my brain fog, my mindset was just quite impacted by this.
Yeah.
So when I experienced that at work myself, and nobody was talking about it, my doctor wasn't saying it was hormone related and it could be menopause. I'd gone to the doctor with various symptoms, and there was no support at all. So when I started to coach, and I started to coach midlifers because that was what I'd been through myself,
Yeah.
late redundancy, everything. I was starting to piece things together and thought, actually, these people are experiencing what I went through as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And I realised it was menopause related. And it was around about the time that the Davina documentary came out. I was chatting to some of my coaching cohorts. They asked, they were saying, did we watch the documentary? And we all said, isn't it ridiculous? There's nobody talking about this until now, and we've never had any support. And I was getting quite radical about it, saying there's no support, we need this. And they said, so do something about it, Sarah. So I started a Facebook group, which I still have. It's called Caution Menopause at Work, and it's basically just a hub just so that people can come in, ask questions, get some advice. Also, I send lots of information in there
Yeah.
from my own training as well, and from a personal blog point of view.
Yeah.
And it started to work really, really well. And the reason I started taking it into workplaces was because one woman found me on the group and said, I don't know whether you deliver this kind of information into workplaces, but it's really, really needed.
Yeah.
And she had a company that she provides wellness training and mental health first aid training, etc. And she said, would you come and work for me? At the time, I said, I'm not quite ready yet. Her
Yeah.
response to me was, darling, you'll never be ready. Should we
Yeah.
do it anyway? And we did, so we worked on this program together. I trained with the Henpicked Association, which is the market leaders in this area.
Yeah.
And I really did want to expand my coaching in menopause. And actually, when she gave me this opportunity, it just really galvanized me.
Mm.
So I trained more. I trained with the Menopause Experts Group, became a menopause champion for them, and the rest really is history.
Yeah. So what were the that sounds like an amazing story. And yeah, from knowing you personally, I know what a journey you've been on with this, and the passion that you have for it is just so like palpable. Like your energy is just lovely. And yeah, and hence why I just wanted you to come and speak about this because
Yeah.
it's so important. But when you were going out into the workplace or doing that, what were the challenges that women were really facing?
Well, the challenges are always the same. They're always they you get women who've been through menopause who really didn't suffer or just got on with it basically, and they think it's quite detrimental to talk about menopause at work because they say it's almost putting women back
Mm.
into a incapable situation, and that's not what we're trying to do at all. We're really just trying to raise awareness about what it is that's happening so that we're piecing together the symptoms and making it tangible to say actually that could be menopause related rather than making up what we think it might be.
Yeah.
That's the reason we're doing it. But the challenges are, we don't need it because we've hardly got any women in the workforce. Well, even if you have a handful of women there, you're still at risk of losing that productivity, that dedication, that, you know, enthusiasm for your business. If you don't support them, if you're not aware of what they may be going through. But I
Mm.
guarantee that nearly every single man in that room will be living or working with a woman who is going through menopause. And
Yeah,
isn't it great to be able to support them at home as well? So
yeah,
those are tough challenges, really tough challenges of getting people to just see the value
mm,
in providing this awareness. And it
yeah.
isn't an expensive course. You know, you can actually put some very simple things in place that just really help. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of leads me on to my next question in terms of like how can obviously they can get this training and better awareness. But specifically, for employers, are there any kind of like policies or accommodations that you can recommend to people
Yeah.
that, if they're listening, thinking actually my employer could do better,
Yeah.
and where could they kind of get that information?
So it's not mandatory to have a policy in place at all, but it is so useful to have a menopause and and a menstrual health policy available so that we all know where we stand. So all employees know if there is support, how it would be provided, if there are, if there's any adjustments that can be made, who to speak to about them and how that can be, how it can be placed. And obviously, if there's a policy in place, then it protects the employer themselves
Yeah.
because they're saying we have provided something, we are taking this seriously. Because legal action towards companies rose by 44% in 2021, where menopause was cited as a reason for action at tribunals. And last week we had the Equity and Health, Health
Mm. Human Rights
Human
Commission, isn't
Rights
it?
Commission
Yeah.
that provided the guidance to businesses saying if you don't provide menopause awareness and adjustments in the workplace, you could be subject to legal activity.
Mm.
So for the 2010 Equality Act, it was saying that it could be considered a disability. I have hard, I find that very hard to believe because I don't see menopause as a disability. I see it as a transition that can be really difficult and disabling in some ways for certain people, but not in general. However, it's great news that they're trying
Yeah.
to do that and that they're trying to bring that awareness. But adjustments can be as simple as flexible timing.
Mm.
If people need a little bit fewer breaks, a few more breaks in the day because their anxiety is becoming overwhelming, or if they're
Mm.
having hot flushes and they need to take themselves out of the office just for a few minutes to calm themselves down, that there's a little bit of flexibility on break taking as well. Or
Yeah.
it could be a fan on the desk. Don't put everybody into Arctic conditions in an office,
Yeah.
but because you want the temperature down, actually have something that isolates that. Or making sure that there are wash care facilities that are able and open to females at all times that have sanitary products in them. This is a time when menopause is coming to the end of our periods, but actually can be quite chaotic before we get
Mhm.
there. And they
Yeah.
can be so erratic that we don't always know where our cycle is up to. So
Yeah.
just having that dignity and place of dignity to actually be able to change clothing if needed, to,
Mm.
to actually, sort ourselves out. I do a lot of work with companies because my background is textiles, because my background is uniform in particular.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
working with lots of exciting companies that actually want to design with menopause in mind, so
Mm.
and menstrual health in mind, so that we're not putting women into garments to try and keep them safe, but actually making them uncomfortable
Yeah.
and
God, I remember my
exacerbating
days
the,
as a nurse. Oh my God, those uniforms are horrendous
yeah,
on a hot sunny day with no aircon in the NHS. I was
and no
absolutely
stretch. Yeah,
sweating.
no
So
stretch, no pleats. Yeah.
no stretch, nothing. So God knows how that must feel for someone having a hot flush because I've experienced hot flushes postpartum, but it's yeah, to be in a nurse's uniform while you're in that, it must be awful. Um, so yeah, no, that sounds like amazing work to be doing. And like, do you have much experience in terms of like women who have like more kind of urinary symptoms during the menopause and kind of the accommodations that the workplace can do as well?
That's what I mean. That there is a collection of symptoms that's
Mm.
genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is around about the genitals and about our vaginal health, our vulva, our bladder, our bowel, everything that estrogen feeds, when it starts to deplete, starts to really dry out these areas, and it becomes really, really uncomfortable. So UTIs are really common during menopause, and it can be so easily sorted with some topical estrogen, which even if there's any risk of anything else, can actually often be used for for cancer patients as well, and improve that area. But this is what I'm saying with when you think about the fact that excessive bleeding can happen, we can have bladder weakness. Definitely, stress incontinence becomes quite a problem during this time, and because of that weakening cavity, then we're really struggling to hold ourselves
Hold on.
together at times, which
Yeah,
is one of the reasons why I want to make sure that there are easy access to toilets, and that you're not constrained to having a break time. That's the only time you can use. You'd be
yeah,
surprised how many companies are still quite rigid on that flexibility, and just talking about it makes them realize
yeah.
that this affects so many people for so many different reasons, and it shouldn't be an issue.
No, I work with quite a few women who have that anxiety of not
Yeah,
having access to toilets all the time. And actually that then creates this kind of loop of anxiety, then
yeah,
increasing the amount of our brain and our bladder are very
mm,
well connected.
yeah,
And when we're highly stressed or highly anxious, then it can really start to make our bladder overactive. And so then that makes you want to go to the toilet even more. So you can see why waking up in the morning going, oh my God, I've got to go to work today
yeah,
and I'm not going to have, and the lack of dignity around that, being afraid of sort of wetting yourself
yeah.
is awful. So,
Oh, it's
you're
horrible.
not going to be able to perform very well at work if that's just constantly on your mind.
But it's a
Um,
health and safety risk in certain industries as well. If you think that if your mind isn't on your job properly, then you are putting yourself and maybe your colleagues at risk as well.
mm,
So it's, there is much more to the individual struggling. It's about, looking at this on a whole. And it's
yeah,
demonstrating that that support is available, stops other people's anxiety as well. Can you imagine being told, you can't go to the toilet, you're going to have to hold it for, it's really difficult.
mm,
So you're absolutely right. The anxiety is actually probably the number one issue for people going through menopause,
mm,
even though we talk about hot flushes and everybody talks about mood swings and everything else that goes with
yes.
it. But actually, it's the anxiety that fuels a lot of these symptoms, because
Mm,
it makes it worse. If we find it hard to get past the actual symptom, because we're just worrying about it constantly, or worrying that it might happen. So hot flushes can be extreme for people,
mm,
because they're thinking, I'm going to have a hot flush, I don't know how I'm going to cope. It's going to be obvious to everybody. I'm going to
yeah.
go bright red. I'm going to start sweating. It's going to be really difficult to manage. That anxiety is going up and up and up.
Mm.
And
Which then triggers
well,
the hot flushes to a degree
yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's really sad actually, because I think if there is a better culture around it
yeah,
rather than sort of like, oh, Mary's having a hot flush,
yeah.
and unfortunately where
And
there is that kind of patriarchal element in terms of the workplace, particularly when women are, getting higher up in their career, they're getting, more responsibilities. There's probably less women at that level as well, and there's more men. So,
oh
I think what's your experiences been in terms of that? It's not to say that all men, in all workplaces are terrible,
no,
but it's,
no,
I think it does add another layer of maybe even as women, we kind of expect that, we're almost like conditioned to go like, this is something we should not be talking about. This is not appropriate. This is something I have to keep myself. And that's obviously where taboo
yeah, yeah.
can be rife. So
Yeah, I think a lot of it is embarrassment. We don't know how to cope, so we make a joke of it. And actually, most people can take a joke or can joke about it themselves. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to go, just give me a minute. I'm having a hot flush. Anything could happen. It could be, or to announce it in whatever way that makes you cope. But you've always got to remember that the way you cope with banter in an
mm,
office, or how you cope with, ridiculing yourself, could really, really upset somebody else,
mm,
because they might be thinking, I can't take that kind of banter from anybody, or I'm not
mm,
that kind of person. And if that happens to me, I really don't know how I'm going to cope. So it's being mindful that language is so powerful in how we start to talk about this. So it's basically being able to check in and say, it's not good enough. You can't just keep teasing. It's not funny. It
No.
isn't actually, it's actually quite a difficult process to get through as it is. Symptoms can be really hard and they can be really unmanageable for many at certain times. And if you're then being teased on top of it, and being teased that you're, oh God, here she goes again, then you're
Mm,
going to just feel so embarrassed about that happening. Or you're going to start to think that you're not capable of doing the job any longer because this is taking over. And
mm,
that's what I really want to stop. 1 in 4 women are looking for a way out of what they're doing. They're looking for a demotion, or they're not taking a promotion that they really deserve
yeah.
because they've worked all their lives and they've worked all their career to get that promotion. And if it happens at a time when these symptoms are starting to kick in,
Mm,
then they're not going to go for that, or they're going to look at sort of holding back a little bit. But it is actually 1 in 10 who leave
yeah.
completely, and a lot of them are in the senior roles because there is more pressure. There
Mm,
is more, pressure to be absolutely on top of your game in a male dominated environment. It's
mm,
sadly true. We can't ever get away from this. At 40, we take on senior roles for the first time on average. And it's quite a good gender split. There's not really any bias. By the
mm,
time we reach 50, where CEO, that's when it's most prominent age to become a CEO, the women drop off. And there are more men and there are more CEOs in the UK by the name of Dave than there are female CEOs. And that's a dreadful
yeah.
statistic. We're not keeping women engaged and supported in
Yeah.
many. I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm just saying that it does have
Mm.
a big factor because of the people that I work with. I know that that's what happened to them.
Yeah, and I think it's really sad because actually, from a business perspective, actually, when there are more female leaders, businesses do really well. So,
Yes.
and the work culture, people actually want to stay
Yeah.
when there are, sort of more females in kind of leadership roles,
Yeah.
because of, maybe just the way we are naturally quite nurturing people. And so retention of staff is much higher as well. So it makes sense, doesn't it,
Yeah.
and I think this is where, particularly labeling, particularly in the news at the moment around, employers are going to get sued if they don't do this, and it's just so negative because actually, it should be rebranded as like employers are going to lose talent, they're going to
Talent.
lose like all of this amazing
Tacit knowledge.
skills and
Yeah.
experience and knowledge. That's what they're going to lose if people
Yeah.
don't stay and they don't make accommodations for people while they're going through this transition.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
that can't be replaced immediately. So, the tacit knowledge that somebody has around that business themselves, if they've been there for a long time, they know all the shortcuts, they know all they've tried and tested the methods, they know what works, they know how to manage dynamics of, when change is happening. And if we lose that, we lose a nurturing part of the business. And if we don't have female representation making big decisions, we tend to end up in a practical, static kind of frame of mind. And
Mm,
we need more empathy. We need more, sympathetic points of view on
mm,
certain things because we need to bring in all factors. And it's not to say that men don't have any empathetic brains, but it gets quite competitive. And
mm,
there's been research done that said that if you only have male influence at the top, then you do miss out on the hearts and mind stuff that actually really matters to the staff. If you don't
mm.
engage the staff, then you are pushing against a closed door because you
Yeah.
need them. You need to bring them on any journey to make sure that your business is future proofed.
Yeah, because if you're not all working for the same goal because you don't feel valued or you're struggling, then you're
Yeah.
not gonna you're not gonna pursue that goal as a whole
No,
company.
no.
And then yeah, people feel disheartened then, don't they, when they're, not enjoying their role at work. And I think, for me as a pelvic health specialist, when I'm working with people, I'm often asking like, what's work like? Because, we have created a lifestyle around work. And there should be more balance in terms of, work-life balance. And I think with women working and still having roles at home, I think the balance is tipped in terms of what we're able to do and be amazing at, because if you're
Yeah,
spinning with these big plates and lots of little plates as well,
yeah,
you're kind of going to miss your eye off the ball. And I know as someone who struggles with her menstrual health in terms of her mental health and, having a young family and a business and learning and, all of that, it just feels like you're never doing it well enough.
yeah,
And just touching on that, I know you do a lot of menstrual health awareness, and I think anyone listening who maybe not at the point of menopause,
yeah.
at whatever time they go through the menopause, I think also, have you got any kind of tips around menstrual health in terms of, like for me, I know, so I suffer with something called PMDD, so it's
Right.
premenstrual dysphoric
Yes.
disorder. And so that kind of, your mental health kind of dies about halfway after you've
Mhm.
ovulated, and
Mhm.
it can, anxiety starts to build, and so around that time I have to really be mindful of what I put into my diary, so that I am not, obviously there are
Okay.
things that just come up and they have to be done,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
how do you, and this might then spill into how women through the menopause can cope with these
Yeah.
situations. um but yeah, I don't know if you had any tips or.
Yeah, and I think our younger generation are so much better about tracking their cycle and
Mm,
and really working with it. And if I look back at how I was behaving during my cycle, there were times when I just put myself under so much pressure at the time when I needed some space. So, in a senior role where it was lots going on. And don't forget that, we're living longer, so we tend to end up in a sandwich generation now going through this
yeah.
transition as well, where we have got younger kids, we are trying to keep a career, and we're also looking after the caregivers for two generations. So there's a
Mm,
lot going on. But if I look back now, it would be even before my menopause started, perimenopause started, if I'd have understood my cycle better, I
mm,
would have said to my MD, I don't want my meeting with you on the third week of the month. I want it to be on the fourth week of the month, because on the third week I'm emotional and I
yeah,
am unfocused and I am in pain quite a lot of the time. And on the fourth week, I am absolutely dynamic. I am the champion that you want working for you. And
yeah.
I would never had that confidence. So I talk to women now and I say, keep track of your symptom of your cycle. Make sure that you're working with it, not against it. Make
Mm,
sure, even down to how you train, if you work out, make
mhm,
sure that you have certain weeks when you are more gentle with your practice, because actually your body is in an overload mode and it
mm,
needs some time, it needs some repair time. You can actually damage yourself by pushing yourself through the same routine that you do in other parts of the week. So
mm,
make sure you're mindful of what activity. Brilliant about setting boundaries and
mm,
setting boundaries for ourselves, not overwhelming ourselves in the
mm,
week that we know that emotions may be running high, or we want to nest in because the body is working really hard
mm.
underneath the scenes. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's really important because I think looking back for me, I used to, your self-esteem kind of goes down when you're feeling like that. And then that's when you push yourself harder because your self-worth is so low that you're
yeah,
pushing yourself even more. And then you get to the point where you're literally like, oh my God, the release of having your period is amazing. So
yeah.
everyone who says, oh, I hate my period, I'm like, I love my period.
I love it.
You know?
I know I'm gonna feel amazing next week. Yes.
Yeah, and then like as soon as I get through my period, I'm like Beyonce hormones are coming back, and I'm
Yeah.
just,
Actually,
I'm
make
feeling,
make make your decisions in that week. Make really good
yeah,
life
yeah.
decisions in that week.
Well, yeah, but you've got to be careful not to make good like decisions, forgetting that the next month you sort of you
Yes.
book things in your in your
Yeah.
confidence, and then you're like,
Yeah.
damn it, I booked it in
Yeah.
when I was feeling great, and now I'm not. And
That's what I mean. Get used to the cycle. Know that when you're going
yeah,
to do that, make sure it's in the
it's
week
an
that's going to be in your favor. But I
yeah.
think it we the more we understand about what's going on for us, but the more we can avoid certain conflicts as well. And, you know, sometimes we walk into situations which we are not confident about.
Mm,
And if we push through them too often, then we end up being the person who is irrational or weak or, you
yeah,
know, emotional. And that's not fair. So it's just, I think, you know, I really want to I try and make people aware of this so that they can stand up for themselves a little bit more.
mm,
Forever, we have been ridiculed about periods and, oh,
mm,
leave her alone, she's on her period. And that's the goes for, you know, not just men, it's everybody, you know,
yeah,
we've
everyone.
always been quite damning about it. And it's such a natural point of our life. Without us menstruating, we wouldn't reproduce. So therefore, pretty important that we do this.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, just having that empathy that what it actually means is it's not just a period. For some, it is really quite catastrophic in
yeah,
you know, PMDD, that response to the drop of the hormones is so severe in some. And it shouldn't again be ridiculed. It should be supported and it should be recognized as, you know, the natural point of our lifestyle.
yeah. And I think, I think when it comes to hormonal health and particularly like hormonal mental health as well, how much lack of awareness and misconceptions around it have created such a taboo. And then, we know that the word hysterical comes from
Yeah.
like hystera, which is,
History.
the sort of Greek word for your womb.
Yeah. What's
And
where hysterectomy comes from.
yeah, absolutely. And that was this treatment for,
Mm.
women who were,
Mm. Yeah.
unhinged
Yeah, yeah,
back in the
exactly.
day.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to, like generational trauma and things like that, women who have really struggled, and I've got a long line myself in my family, of having postnatal depression and it not being supported well. And then, having and that obviously creates complexities with children of those parents who have struggled with that, and then that then passes on and passes on, and sometimes the dots don't always connect that actually it was a hormonal disorder rather
Mm.
than
Mhm.
them having some other mental health condition.
Yeah.
And it's really important that I think women understand this and maybe try and investigate this, because I think for me,
Mm.
it's really allowed me to have more empathy for my childhood and my upbringing. And that's
Mm.
definitely helped with acceptance and actually learning, and then having the fire to actually then educate about this to other women,
Amazing. Yeah.
because it's so important that you don't then think, oh, they just struggled with their mental health when they were growing up.
Well, you know, a lot of it is
It's
learned, isn't it? We learn that if that's
yeah,
how our mums cope with it and how their mums cope with it, then that's our learned behaviour is that we just have to put up and shut up. And you
yeah,
know, when you said about what do I get, you know, what sort of barriers do I get a lot of that. You know, again, we just have to put up and shut up. It's like, well, do we really? Would we suffer in any other way without asking for assistance or asking for support? And I don't think we would. I think we would always want to make sure that we are supporting each other, knowing the benefit is going to be for everybody, just
yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Oppression just doesn't work in society. Like it has no benefit whatsoever. If we suppress things, it just builds up and it
Yeah.
creates awful feelings within our body, creates illnesses. We do need to be talking more openly about this.
Well, when cortisol gets extreme as well, you know, it steals the production of estrogen. So actually we're doing more damage to ourselves by constantly living in a state of stress. And that's actually the way that we live these days, we're on a heightened level of stress than we've ever been before. So
Yeah,
it's being mindful of that and being mindful of how we can manage that to,
yeah.
you know, bring ourselves down into a peaceful and calm.
Absolutely. And I think when there is injustice as well, I see this a lot in pelvic pain and things like that. If people have high injustice scores, then
Yeah.
they do experience their suffering is much higher.
Mm.
And so it's not always about treating the individual. It has to have this environmental change around this individual to fully support their health. And this is exactly why I wanted you on, because as much as I can help people with their pelvic health, and menopause and things like that, actually at the end of the day there has to be some systematic change around that individual to support their well-being. And we spend a lot of time at the workplace, um, and even if we're working from home, you're still doing the role, you're still going to be managing those symptoms at home.
Mhm.
So, and more on your own, you're not going to be able to talk to someone about
I
it,
know.
or,
It's
you know,
hard, yeah. And
it's,
that's what it is. It's about switching the narrative. I don't want everybody to dread menopause because it's doom and gloom, because it's portrayed in the press as a disability, therefore it's a, it's doom. It's not. It's
yeah,
actually a really empowering part of our life.
mm,
It's a time when many of us actually reach a point where we go, actually, what's in it for me now? I've got 30 years ahead of me post menopause. What can I do? How can I make sure that my life is going to be good in those years? And I'm not just going to hang up my coat and go, well, I've reached menopause, therefore I'm done. You're not at all. It's a very empowering time in life. Lots of female entrepreneurs actually take on that mantle in their 50s because they realize that they've got so much more to give and they want more for themselves as well.
yeah,
So it's a brilliant time of life if we can understand what's going on for us and actually manage and provide that support for each other as well. And when women start to support each other, magic happens. I truly believe that. I think that's really empowering.
yeah, definitely. No, I completely agree. And I think, for anyone like who's listening to this who might have had like a surgical menopause, or, went through it earlier, I think that narrative can sometimes feel a bit doesn't quite hit the mark, in terms of, because it's not something that they were expecting to happen at that point in their lives. But equally, I think if it's well supported and
Yes.
acknowledged, because
Yeah.
a lot of time women that don't go through the natural menopause but go through it earlier, or because of surgery or chemotherapy or radiotherapy, it can there's a lot of other complexities around that in terms of infertility, and and
Yes.
kind of where that's going. But I think even still there should still be support for those women in terms of um, all the kind of things that they're going to experience. Their experience is going to be slightly different, and
Yes.
but equally employers should be aware of that. And
Well, yeah, and that's where no individual should have to go and explain everything that's going on for them in their menopause to a manager. Having the manager aware that if they have been through any surgery that could have, forced them into overnight menopause, then there's going to be some adjustments that are going to be required.
yeah,
And surgical menopause is quite brutal because there's no gentle run up to it through perimenopause. It happens overnight. And the symptoms can be exacerbated because of that, but it can be happening to women in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, at an age when all their peer group is looking for a life partner and to have children. They then in a situation where they are no longer capable of reproducing. So there's
mm,
totally different emotions that go with it as well. And if
mm,
you're 26 years old, you've had a hysterectomy, oophorectomy through cancer treatment or for other reasons, endometriosis is also
mm,
another one. Um, then where do you fit? You're 26, you don't fit with your peer group, but you also don't fit with the 51-year-old who's on average going through menopause. So
mm,
there has to be some understanding that it does happen to people of all ages
mm,
and genders now. We
mm,
recognize that a trans man might be going through menopause because they still have all the biological
mm,
equipment to go through menopause. So we're really mindful of how we talk about it and make
mm.
sure that people understand that it comes in many, many shapes and
Yeah.
forms.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's often a misconception, isn't it, around menopause, and actually it can affect anyone, and actually statistically
Yeah,
it's a lot higher than people think,
yeah.
when people going through it much earlier, and
Women
there's
of colour will naturally go through menopause earlier. So,
mm,
Caucasian women tend to be, it's 51 is the average to reach menopause, which is the 12-month anniversary since your last period.
mm,
But women of colour it's on average of 46 years old. And again, these are averages, so they're not set in
yeah,
stone, but it's worth knowing that actually that is an impact as well. And it's a
yeah.
different way of handling it.
Yeah, because that perimenopause phase can actually be starting 10 years before
10 years.
those
Yeah,
days, so
yeah,
having, so that could be someone in their late 30s,
yeah,
starting to
yeah.
get those changes. So
I, yeah.
yeah, no, it is no, important. Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. I think we'll leave it there because I think we've
Yeah.
fitted so much into that. And yeah, we covered all my questions, but without me asking you a direct question, which was great.
Well, we did
So,
say we'd have a chat. It's just trying to rein me
yeah,
in sometimes
definitely.
because obviously
Yeah, yeah, no,
we're
that's
both very
great.
passionate about what we do. And I think sometimes that could mean we go off a little bit. But it's been a
Amazing.
pleasure. I've really enjoyed
Yeah,
it. Thank you for asking me.
I know. Thank you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see each other soon. All right, take care.
Okay.
Bye.
And you. Bye.